you know what? I was thinking a lot about today because we don't really have a start. I don't have a welcome. We're not welcome to what it is or enough said or maintaining with Tyrus. I guess that's our name. I never really start an actual show, but I feel like the more I talk to you, the more I feel like we become interlocking souls. And I almost want to put my glasses on because are we the old men on the front lawn now? Is that what we've become? Where we just see these kids losing their minds?
I have this conversation out loud with Dr. Drew all the time where I go, is it because we're this age that all this stuff seems nuts, or are all these kids nuts?
Yes.
And yes, I think the answer is we are the age who recognizes they're nuts. That is true. But I'd like to think the 27-year-old Adam Carolla and the 27-year-old Tyrus would also think these kids were nuts.
I think I would. I was trying to think about watching them because I've been spending a lot of time with my kids this summer. And the more time I spend with them, the more I'm like, who are you? Like their whole mindset is so much different. Like when I was growing up, we had a term called don't do anything half. Did your mom ever say that to you? Like half work is a waste of time because you're going to end up doing more work because I'm going to come back. I'm going to be upset that you didn't do it the right way. So I'm going to make you do it all over again. And then you're going to do double the work. So do it right the first time. Now, it took me like maybe 3 lectures to figure that out and some very long Saturdays of putting leaves in a trash bag. I am literally at attempt number 72 with my kids to explain this with them. I'm getting to the point where I don't know the difference between half work and regular work when it comes to chores. And apparently I'm an evil dad because no other dad makes kids do chores anymore. Are you seeing any of this lazy awkwardness?
Well, yeah, I have a lot of thoughts about this. One is I completely agree with you in that my greatest fear is having someone tell me the same thing a second time.
Yes.
It's just a fear I have in life. And it can be micro, it could be macro, it could be big things, it could be small things. If my woman says, "Hey man, can you kick your shoes off downstairs and not kick them off upstairs in the bedroom where I trip over them?" If she had to say that to me a second time, I would go into a shame spiral. I would feel really bad. And I spent my whole life being coached. And when you're getting coached, you know, this is what a 3-point stance looks like. You got too much weight on your front hand, or your is too high, or whatever it is. Keep your head down. All the form. And I hated, and I looked at it as shameful if the coach said it a second time to me ever, whatever it is they told me the first time. Well, and I went through my life this way. I used to do morning radio when I took over for Howard Stern. And one day, a year in, Jimmy Kimmel pulled me aside and he said, "You keep saying awesome on the air. You keep saying awesome. Like, oh, that's awesome. Oh, that sweater's awesome." He goes, "You never say awesome. Why do you keep saying awesome?" And I was, a wash of shame went over me. And I was like, I don't know. It's like a bad habit or something. I keep saying that's awesome. And he goes, "Well, it's kind of annoying, so you should stop it." And I was like, you know what? You're right. I will. And I worked at it, and I never did it again because my greatest fear was to see Jimmy 2 months later and have him go, "You keep saying awesome. You didn't stop. I told you to stop." So, in other words, I was moved and bothered when someone told me something. I now tell the same people the same thing over and over and over again, sometimes only a day apart. Of the last time I told them, it does not bother them at all.
Not at all.
They have no shame. They have no issues with it.
I had one of my trainers, coaches in the WWE, the great Arn Anderson, used to tell me, "Listen, I don't mind if you make mistakes. You just can't make the same one twice." So we're in the same water. You know, it literally, I would do, if a coach says, because basically how it would be in the athletic world is you might get told the same, like, "Hey, keep your feet inside when you're in your stance. Keep your feet." Eventually you're not doing it, they'll stop talking to you. They're not going to waste their time on you anymore. They're already looking to replace you at that point. So there was real life consequences for not making corrections. And I find even like, because this weekend the power was out at my house. So I went into revert. Well, we're camping this weekend, kids. We're gonna do things outdoors, and you would have thought that I was planning a trip to the junkyard where I was going to drop them off in the giant piles of trash because there'd be no Wi-Fi. There'd be no TV of any kind. And it's not like when we were growing up to where if one thing didn't work, the cable could still work if something else wasn't working, where now we're all technology. One thing goes out, you've got nothing. Smart TVs are stupid if they don't have Wi-Fi and power. So it was just just watching this and trying not to get frustrated to the point where I was like, you know what? Maybe it's me. Maybe this is me, because I listened to when people told me things and I didn't take it personal. I'd say, okay, they're trying to help me be better. Whenever I try to give advice to any younger person, it's always taken with a sense of, oh, I got to hear this. So, and I'm trying to, were we that way? Because I feel like I need to go back to the guy who used to say, get off my grass and get a job, and apologize to him like, sir, your words were gold. I'm glad that I had them in my head, because no one listens. Is it us? It could be us. Maybe we're not good at the message.
There's a couple things. I think there's certain things from the past that we can all agree that we don't need to revisit and we can evolve and move forward from. And there's plenty of chapters in this nation's history and world history where we go, that was a bad idea. Two separate drinking fountains for blacks and whites. Okay, bad idea. Should have never done that. And we've evolved past that. But then there are things like diet and exercise and discipline, and a stitch in time saves 9. I don't know when they came up with the adage, a stitch of time saves 9, but that is 400 years old, but yet it's super true today. And you can never argue with diet and exercise. You can have all the Weight Watchers fudge you want and all the Ozempic you want, but diet and exercise is just as true today as it was in the Roman days and before that. So yes, there's certain things we've evolved into, but I think the kind of stuff that you're talking about is not that. I think this is a de-evolution.
Do you think it's the participation error that changed things to where just getting recognized for showing up is replaced the bitter taste of defeat, and that failing moment that we all need? Because if you don't have a failing moment, you'll never be able to understand when you're succeeding. Like, you've got to have that. Is it the replacement of failure with, well, hey, you showed up. You hear your trophy's the same size as the team that won the tournament. Do you think that is maybe where this is coming from, to where we've just praised them for everything? So praise means nothing, and therefore any type of constructive criticism is just looked as an assault.
I think we lost our way with the self-esteem movement. We decided, and you can mark it. The guy came up with the self-esteem movement, I think in the 80s or 90s, but we decided the reason kids acted out or even put their hands on anybody or murdered somebody was low self-esteem. We just decided that the root of all evil was low self-esteem. So then we set about how to create self-esteem in these people with low self-esteem. And all we did is graft it onto them. We didn't say achieve greatness. We just went, you're the greatest. It's basically like saying, you want to play Thor, you want to be Thor for Halloween, don't work out with weights. Well, I'll give you a muscle suit and you can just put that on and walk around with it. It was basically that. We're going to say you're the greatest. We're going to say you're the best. We're going to say nobody disrespects you. Nobody talks down to you. Nobody tells you what to do. There's only one you, and you're the greatest. And we just shoved that. We foisted it on every kid. And now the chickens have come home to roost. Now we're basically experiencing the self-esteem movement.
Right. You know what? Because I don't remember. I also think parents are no longer like I was never friends with my mom. We were never even on a first name basis. Like, I would never describe my relationship with my mom as like she was my friend. She kept it real even when I didn't want to hear it. Like I never, I'd have a football game or a basketball game or whatever I was doing. My mother would always find 5 things I should have done better. And at the time, I used to hate that. I used to hate that she would always find things. But then I found that as I got older, whenever I did something, film study, or I would look for the things that I didn't do well. Even though I couldn't stand the fact that she did it, it is made to where I can literally see my own weaknesses before anyone else notices and be like, oh, correction. I need to correct that. My posture's bad here. I'm doing this here. And even though I didn't like it at the time when she did it, it became one of the most valuable tools I have today. So, and I feel like, and I really push that hard with my kids, and the pushback I get from other adults, or I guess I have to be more respectful to their mom's wishes, but it's like I get so much pushback for stating the obvious. Like, no, that was an L. That was a horrible effort. I'm sorry. That was. I'm glad you finished, but you were 45 seconds behind everybody else. I can't applaud that. You need to be better. And I'll hear, oh, how could you do that? You're going to hurt their self-esteem. And I just smirk. I'm like, no, it's going to build it. Like I keep telling them great every time they do something. Isn't that worse for self-esteem?
Well, if they're failing and you tell them they're doing well, then they think when they're failing, they're doing well. And then they're just going to take that into the workplace. And now you're going to have every 26-year-old I've ever employed. And a lot of it is the feminization of our society. Women really kind of being the tip of the spear in terms of what goes on at home, sort of setting the trends, so to speak, at home. For instance, women laid out all the protocol for all things COVID at the home, you know? So they were in charge of wiping stuff down or taking your shoes off or, letting the bag sit outside overnight so it would somehow de-germ itself.
I spent a lot of time covered in aerosol and stripping in the garage and being sprayed down. But I noticed that I never, during the entire COVID process, was ever allowed to spray anybody down. I never had to, I never said, hey, don't come in here with those, you have socks on? Whoa, 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 everything in the bag. Everything in the bag.
Right.
Yes. So you're
None
right.
of it made sense. Okay, so we have the self-esteem movement mixed with the moms taking charge. My kid ran cross country, my boy, when he was, 8 or 9, 10, whatever. And after a whole day of watching him run cross country, which is about the worst thing you can do in terms of entertainment level, in terms of kids sports, is cross country, Right. MMA would be fun. Tackle football is fun. Girl volleyball is fun, but cross country is literally. So at the end of the day, and a long afternoon of watching him run in circles, he came in 8th place. And I said to my wife, it's time to leave. Thank God. And she said, no, we got to wait for the medal ceremony. And I said, there is no medal ceremony for 8th place. And she said, oh, yeah, they got a podium. When you watch one of the craziest, Tyrus, you would love this. All those crazy shots of Oregon school system, and you got the he, she that's winning the race. And so you have a biological male kicking the shit out of all the girls in the 440. Fine. That's upsetting. What's more upsetting is when you see the podium ceremony and the podium goes from 1st to 7th. They're standing on a cookie sheet in 7th place. It goes all the way down.
They literally have to dig a pit for 8th because he's under the ground.
They dig a hole. You have to stand in a hole. For 8th, a cookie sheet is 7th. Watch that clip. You'll see that dude, he, she, whatever, taking the gold, and then it's silver, and then it's bronze.
What medal is that when you get down to 7th and 8th place? Like a tin? Like what is the cubic zirconium for Micah?
I think it's foil. Yeah.
I think it should be lead. I think you should get or you know what? Let's make it full ceremony. 8th place is a bag of coal from the North Pole.
That's right.
Like you're not getting nothing this year. You got to turn it around. This isn't going to get it. Well, no, that's trying to motivate. I'm sure that would be making more damage. See, we're learning here. I said it's time to go. And my wife at the time said,
no, we got the ceremony. And I'm like, what ceremony? 8th place. There's no ceremony. Oh, yes, there is. And so in that particular case, you have the sort of powers that be conspiring with the self-esteem movement, with all the folks that make money off of these tournaments and stuff like that. There's a sort of cash grab involved too.
Oh yeah.
With the mothers that have been converted and now are in charge. There is no, hey woman, the man has spoken. Oh no, they're setting the policy.
Yes.
They're setting the COVID policy and they're setting the medal ceremony policy. And now the male is along for the ride. And really what these kids need is a nice shot of testosterone, like a nice male figure who goes, hey, watch your tone, boy. They need that. They're not getting it. And that's why we're
and then when they get in the real world, in the first confrontation they have, they're screaming, where's my safe space? Or my mom's going to sue you. Like that's a defense system. And that's probably why we're seeing, like I said, the older I get, the more but I feel like it feels different. Because I get every generation's always going to have an issue with the next generation because your mindset is, listen, we did all this work, and then we see them coming up behind us, and they're not appreciative of the work that was laid before them. But it just feels so different because it's intrusive. I don't remember there being such a public outcry for attack on parents. And you look in even the 70s when we had a lot of the hippie movements and the weird music and everyone wanted to express themselves sexually and experiment. But I think of that, but then there's this era and it just feels so unnatural. It feels so like there's an underlining thing that we're missing. And the more that I try to get my head around it, because I also don't want to be the guy. I don't want to be the guy who's the bitter old guy who's picking on everybody, because there's too much, I grew up around that. I don't see it as much anymore. I don't see any grandfathers, to be honest with you. You don't see them, because it used to be grandfathers. It wasn't even if it was his kid. It was just the grandfathers in the neighborhood were everybody's grandfather. And you would talk to him, and you would see him, and then you'd get your first job cutting grass or picking up leaves, or whatever the situation was. You just don't see it anymore. And do you think that's social media, or is it just the average man is like, it's just not worth it for me to get involved anymore?
I gotta say, honestly, after a couple of earnest attempts to sort of coach up my son and really kind of go, hey, I'm the dad. Here's how you do a proper push-up. You're not doing it properly. Do it again. I think after a few sort of talking tos by my ex-wife about why you so hard on him, you hurt his feelings, and whatever that thing is, I think a lot of guys naturally just sort of retreated to their den and poured themselves a scotch.
Yeah.
I mean, it wasn't any different. I keep circling back to COVID, but it's like, I didn't want to wear a mask. I knew it wouldn't do anything. Wiping down your your shopping cart handle, or wearing gloves in the supermarket, or taking your shoes off. I didn't want anything to do with that. I knew it did nothing, but I also lived with a daughter who would have a spaz attack if I walked in with my tennis shoes on. So I started just kicking them off by the door, sort of, let discretion be the better part of honor, and I don't want the hassle, and it works. It works very well when people want to get their way. There's a Trump version of that. Like, look, just vote for Joe Biden. I'm so tired of everyone going nuts. I'm so tired of the hassle. I'm so tired of the screaming and the pearl clutching, and every day there's a new controversy. He peed on the grave of the unknown soldier. So says CNN. And a lot of people voted for Trump. I should say voted for Biden in the last election because they're like, I'm just tired of it. I don't want to hear my spouse screaming about him anymore. I just want to go about my goddamn life. So they essentially blackmail you. It's basically like a roommate that says, you're going to clean your dishes and you're going to clean my dishes. And you go, why should I clean your dishes? And you go, why should I clean your dishes? And they go, because I'm going to make you miserable if you don't.
Yep.
And at a certain point you go, F it, I'll just do the dishes. It's not even worth it. And so a lot of guys, grandpas in the neighborhood, whomever, are all there. I'm there with a lot of people. I'm like, people go, you need to talk to this guy about. I go, F him. I don't even care.
Hey, listen, I decided to teach my daughters how to dive this weekend and during our power outage. And there's no nice way to be taught to dive. You're going to get water up your nose. You're going to belly flop. And if, while you're figuring it out, and, dad shows you how he dives. And if I'm 6'8" and 340 pounds and I can dive like a swan, you can too. Teaching them to fall. And I just remember every time I was like, get to the point where like, nope, hurt your belly, didn't. And I heard, then mom steps in and be like, hey, she's hurt. Give her a hug. I'm like, no, she needs to work through the belly flop. Because it's only going to hurt this bad the first time, because the next time you jump, you're going to remember that, and you're going to open your eyes and lead with your hands. So by the end of the day, they're hitting dives like swans, and they figured it out, and we're cheering, and it felt so good, and I'm like high-fiving and everything else, and then I got the business. Like, I spent my whole day looking out the window hearing you telling me, tuck your chin, do this, do that. Like, you can't talk to them like that. They don't want to be wrestlers. They don't want to be monstrous men. They just want to be little girls playing in the pool. And I just snapped back because I guess I am that now. And I said, well, they're diving little girls in the pool now. Thank you very little. So if you want to go out there and teach them participation belly flops, you go right ahead. But there's only one way to dive. So I was the mean bear. I didn't get any prizes at dinner that night. And the girls, of course, sided with their mom. Like, yeah, Dad, you weren't being our buddy out there. You were being like a mean coach. And I'm like, can you dive? Yes or no?
Yeah.
Game, set, blouses. Dad wins. But you're right. I ended up alone watching the Red Sox in my room with no one wanting to talk to me because I'm a grouch. And it's not a grouch. It's just you need factual information when you dive. Facts. I can't ask you feelings. Feelings get belly flops. You like belly flops? No one likes a belly flop or water up your nose. But you are 1,000% right. I will be sitting in that house with you going, you going to talk to him? And you're going to say, you're going to talk to him? We're both going to say, nah, f it, what for? Let's just watch this play out.
So whether it's your dad or the grandpa that stopped giving out sagely advice or the coach, when they stop talking to you, that's the end.
Yep.
That means you don't want them to stop talking to you. Number one. Number two, yes, there is a phenomenon where the kids learn very quickly that they can sort of play the parent. 99% of the time, it's the mom. I've been on the losing end of that equation 1,000 times.
I haven't won yet.
I had a good one. I used to say to my son, so I lived up in the foothills in Los Angeles in La Cañada, and it got very cold during the wintertime, and it would get down into the 30s, even the high 20s at night, cold for SoCal. And thus the swimming pool in the backyard was freezing during the winter, probably in the mid 40s.
Oh, I lived in the high desert, so yeah, it was cold at night, yeah.
And I would do the cold plunge on a daily basis. I just go into the freezing pool during the winter months. And then I got a cold tank for the summer months. But be all that as it may, I said to my son, who was, was like 13 at the time, and my wife at the time agreed that the kid needed more confidence, needed to kind of toughen up a little bit. He needed that confidence. I said to him, look, I'll tell you what. I go out about 2 nights a week and I do comedy in town for free. I do not get paid. It's not me going on the road playing a theater. It's me driving from La Cañada into the Comedy Store on a Wednesday night, doing 15 minutes and not getting paid, but just to get better at what I'm trying to be. And when I do those things on those nights, the next day you owe me a pool plunge. The next day, after I go out, if I work for free, the next day, you're taking a pool dunk with me. And that lasted 2 or 3 times maybe. And then at some point, the wife got involved. And then look at him, he's shivering, And then he, of course, played it up to her. Yep. And now once you got him getting a daytime Emmy for acting and her being just sort of female and impractical and not understanding this is exactly what this kid needs. And you can't hurt a 13-year-old boy with cold water. Hell, I'm old and I'm in the pool every day. Right. So, boom, there it is. So there's a kind of, they collaborate, they work symbiotically. The kid realizes really quickly who the sympathetic parent is and plays that sympathetic parent. Then there's other powers. There's school teachers, there's friends, and they all side with them. Like, he did what? He told him to get in a
yes.
freezing pool. Freezing pool is going to catch his death of cold. Okay. And now it's on. And now I'm going to my room, pouring a scotch, shutting the door, and watching the Dodgers.
Well, throw the carcass out and then pour me one. This has been the grumpy old men edition of Maintaining on OutKick. Always a pleasure. Well, this is a collaboration because I'm jumping on your podcast right after this. So, man, I don't know if we solved any issues, but we definitely know we both stand in the same deep water and we don't want no life vests. So I appreciate you, man. Thanks for coming on, and I'll see you in about 20 seconds.
Thanks, Tyrus.
Always a pleasure, man.